Thank you, Las Vegas. Oh my gosh. Wow, you all are beautiful. Let's give you a round of applause. Come down here too. I don't want to let this side feel slighted.
Hey!
Good to see you. So, thank you all for being part of the Yang Gang early on. You all know I'm not a politician, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a problem solver. I was looking up a bunch of numbers before I came out here today. Yeah, math, that's true. Andrew Yang loves his math. And you all know I'm concerned about the impact of technology on the economy, where I worked at an organization that I started, Venture for America, that helped create thousands of American jobs. And I became convinced the reason why Donald Trump won in 2016 was that we automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, Iowa. And we're about to do the same thing in a lot of other jobs, including many jobs right here in Nevada. And I was looking up how Nevada fits into this picture. Did you all know that Nevada is the #1 state out of all 50 for jobs that are going to be displaced by technology and automation? Did you all know that? No. And you look at the jobs that comprise the Nevada economy: retail, gaming, hospitality, call centers, trucking and transportation. All of those jobs are highly subject to robots and new technologies. I don't know if you saw the recent headlines that MGM recently told all of their bartenders they're going to be replaced by robot bartenders. How many raise your hand if you saw that headline? Yeah, some of you probably know people are affected by that. And in most of the rest of the country, that literally reads like a science fiction headline. That's like a haha, like Onion, parody, funny, interesting. But for you all, it's real life. For MGM, it's real life. MGM ran the numbers, and they said, if we replace that bartender with a robot, that's going to pay for itself in a matter of months. And so you all are ground zero for the automation wave. You all understand it more naturally and deeply than most of the rest of the country. If I go to other parts of the country and say, hey, automation may be coming, some of them are like, well, won't there be new jobs that get created? Won't this be just like the other times in American history? And I try to break it down to them, like, not everyone is sitting here in Silicon Valley in like this nice air-conditioned office, you know what I mean? Like only 8% of Americans work in STEM fields, 92% don't. And so we're selling these fantasies that everyone's going to become a software engineer. It's totally not reality. And the reason I'm here with you all tonight is that Nevada is not only ground zero for this automation wave, but you're also ground zero for the 2020 election.
Yeah!
The parade is just getting started. All the presidential candidates are going to come here and say, hey, Nevada, we love you. We need your help. We need you to caucus for us. We need you to vote. And how many presidential candidates have you seen before me? Like, raise your hand if I'm the first. Oh, I love it. Wow. I love it. Second. Third.
First in a lifetime.
First in a lifetime. I love it. How many of you didn't like politics until just now? There are always some people at Andrew Yang rallies that resemble that. And so we're all going to start parading. If you're the first candidate, I will not be the last. And you all have an incredibly important role to play because the first state's going to be Iowa, second state's going to be New Hampshire, and nothing's going to get resolved. And then it's you all. Then whoever Nevada comes out for, the country's going to focus on and say that person could be the next president of the United States. So it's tremendous being here with you all tonight and knowing that this campaign is just now taking off, where I'm polling at 3% nationally right now, and most people have never heard of Andrew Yang. And you know that, because you all heard of me, and you tell your friends, be like, hey, Andrew Yang, and they're like, what? And then you send them a Joe Rogan interview, or a Sam Harris interview, or a Freakonomics interview, or your favorite interview, and they're like, oh, Andrew Yang. So I'm polling at 3% nationally, and my name recognition is lower than just about anyone else's. And Nate Silver, a very smart guy who looked at this, he said, wait a minute, Andrew Yang's raised $3 million in increments of only $19? So this is like the cheapest gang to join ever. and my fans are even cheaper than Bernie's. We made Bernie's fans look spendy. So Nate Silver looks at it and says, we raised $3 million in increments of only $19. He's polling at 3%, and his name recognition is lower than anyone else's. And so he's one of the most esteemed political analysts in the country. And he said, based on these numbers, we cannot discount the possibility that Andrew Yang just grows and grows and grows. And that is the way it's going to play out. Because I'm getting Democrats and progressives. Go ahead and clap if that resembles you. Democrats and progressives. I'm getting independents. I'm getting libertarians. I'm getting Donald Trump supporters and voters. No, it's fine. I'm always Donald Trump supporters. I just talked to, this is more my heart, I just talked to a married couple that said that last time he went for Trump, she went for Hillary, they fought about it all the time, and now this time they're both going for me. And nobody has to come out of the house. So this campaign is about showing America that it's not immigrants that are causing these economic problems, it is technology. And then we can come together on meaningful solutions like the Freedom Dividend, which would put $1,000 in the hands of every American adult starting at age 18. How does that sound to you all, Las Vegas? And you know, if you had $1,000 a month, what would you spend it on? Go ahead, shout something out. This man just shouted out marijuana. He's part of that. Sure, it's all that would happen. But a lot of it gets spent right here in your community. It would make your families and businesses and neighborhoods stronger and more vital. And some of that money would flow back up to the big tech companies that are in the process of automating away jobs, and that's okay, as long as we get the money first. You know, how is it that Jeff Bezos and Amazon? Well, Jeff Bezos probably paid more than this, but Amazon. How much did Amazon pay in federal taxes in 2018? How much did you all pay in federal taxes?
Way more than zero.
And Amazon's worth $1 trillion. How is it possible that $1 trillion tech company paid less in federal taxes than you all? You know, and they're like high-fiving each other, being like, another job, another year of zero taxes, well done. And what I say is like, look, that's not their fault, that's our fault. We must have really screwed up, and that company's paying zero taxes. So what we do is we get the money back from Amazon and the gang, bring it back to you all, and build a trickle-up economy. From people and families and communities up. It's not left, it's not right, it's forward. And so this is a plan, this is how we can help bring our country back together. Donald Trump's our president today in part because he got the problems correct. If you remember in 2016, he went around saying, we've got problems, we've got problems. And then the Democratic response was, no we don't, things are great. And then unfortunately, he won. He had the better case. So he pointed out the problems and he got them essentially correct. Our life expectancy has declined for the last 3 years because of drug overdoses and suicides. American society is struggling, but unfortunately his solutions were the exact opposite of what we need. What were his solutions? We're going to build a wall, we're going to turn the clock back, we're going to bring back the jobs, and we need to do the exact opposite of all that. We need to turn the clock forward. We need to start accelerating both our economy and society. And I'm the man to beat Donald Trump in 2020 because the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math. Thank you all very much. So we're going to do a little Q&A with Sheila, and then I'm going to take some questions from you all. So start thinking, because I want to hear what's on your minds. Thank you.
Yeah, right.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Again, so I want to know, what would you say to your critics who would suggest that by allowing freedom dividends will make individuals not look for paying them $1,000 a month? So what would you say to your critics?
You know what's fantastic is I really haven't gotten this objection that much around the country. And because Americans know that we like to work, and that the people that, if you gave people $1,000 a month, people would probably work as much or more. And the numbers bear that out. There are two groups of people that work less if you give them $1,000 a month. And those two groups are new mothers who spend more time with their children, and teenagers who spend more time in high school and graduate at higher levels. And I don't think we're mad at either of those. Everyone else works as much or more, and if you have $1,000 a month, it would end up circulating in our economy and creating more work in our communities. The other big thing is, I talk about my wife a fair amount. My wife is with our 2 boys right now, one of whom is autistic, and what does the market value her work at every day? 0. What does GDP value her work at? 0. And so putting $1,000 a month into people's hands doesn't keep us from working. Oftentimes it ends up recognizing the work that we are already doing that is going completely ignored in our market economy every day. And if the Democratic Party is going to talk about empowering women, I'm going to suggest that there's nothing better we could do than put $1,000 a month into everyone's hands, because that would help millions of American women improve their situations from exploitative and abusive jobs and relationships. So the Democratic Party can talk about empowering women, or we can do something about it, and I think we should do something about it.
Next question. What makes you a better candidate than all the rest of the candidates that are running?
Well, certainly, I don't have any bones about anyone supporting another candidate. I mean, I supported another candidate before I started running for president this time, and his name was Bernie Sanders. I like Bernie. We owe him a great debt. And I think that I've met most of the other candidates who are running. I have to say, one of the fun things about running for president is you actually meet the other candidates. What happens is you're in the green room and you're hanging out together, and they're just like, "Hey, what's up, Beto?" And so, I like and admire most of the other candidates, except for that one. I'm kidding. And I think that I'm running for president because I have a vision for how to improve our lives, and I also have a clear sense of the problems on the ground. Where when I talk about the fact that the 5 most common jobs in the economy are administrative and clerical work, including call centers, retail, and sales, and 30% of American malls and stores are closing. How many of you all know the stores closing where you live? Right? 30% of stores are closing, and the most common job in this state is working in retail. And the average retail worker is a 39-year-old woman making between $10 and $12 an hour. And you know when that store closes, what's that worker's next move going to be? Number 3 is food service and food preparation. Number 4 is truck driving and transportation. And my friends in Silicon Valley are working on trucks that can drive themselves. How many of you all have friends in technology? You know what I'm talking about. Where you talk to them and say, "Hey, what are you working on?" A lot of them are like, "Oh, I'm trying to, get rid of a lot of jobs." And then if you ask them, how do you feel about that? They're like, "I don't feel good about it." And so these are the real challenges, and most of our politicians, for whatever reason, are not able to acknowledge what's happening. And part of it's because they don't understand technology for the most part. Some of them don't understand the way the different pieces of our economy fit together. So I believe that I'm laser focused on solving the problems that got Donald Trump elected, and I'm uniquely able to bring in supporters from all parts of the political spectrum. Right now, the Democrats' #1 priority is beating Donald Trump. I am the candidate who's going to beat Donald Trump solid. And he even called it himself at a rally a number of months ago. He said, "I cannot wait to run against all these Democrats. My only concern is that some new figure comes out of nowhere that no one's ever heard of. That's the only thing I worry about." We're going to make his words true. We're going to make Donald Trump look very, very prophetic in the rest of the year or so.
So let's talk about Medicare for all. So as we know what's going on in the news and the conversation, Medicare is becoming insolvent sooner by 2026. What are your plans to champion that?
So I'm very passionate about this because I understand the numbers, and anyone who looks at what's going on in our healthcare system knows that we're spending twice as much as other countries to worse results. If you run a business, you know that our healthcare system makes it harder to hire people. It makes it harder to treat them like a full-time employee. You just treat them as a gig worker. It makes it harder for all of us to switch jobs. If you ever think about starting a business, it makes it much harder to start a business because you're concerned about your healthcare. And so people talk about how are you going to pay for it. It's like we're already paying for it in so many different ways. And the worst part is if we get sick or injured, we're more stressed out about navigating our system than we are actually getting well or getting our loved ones well. And so there's so much waste and excess in the system right now. And one example I'll use is just prescription drug prices. It's like, you've all seen these like crazy prices just come out of nowhere, and it's like, hey, we just increased the price 400%. Any reason? No. Like, you know, like, can you afford it? Like, you can't. Well, it's cool. We'll find someone else who'll. And then Americans are making terrible choices where they have to choose between their medications and food and shelter, or like clothing their kids, or, you know, it's just like terrible, terrible choices. And you look at it and you say, it does not need to be this way. It does not need to be this way, because right now we've got this entire industry just, frankly, profiteering off of our backs. And so if you rationalize the costs, you can get the access up and the prices down, and make it so that Medicare does not go broke, because right now Medicare is not even allowed to negotiate drug prices. Like, can you imagine, like, you're like the biggest buyer in the country, which you are, Medicare, and then the drug company's like, here, we're going to charge you like $50 a month for this pill. And you just have to take it. Of course you're going to go bankrupt. You're just like, what, I'm supposed to pay whatever the drug company tells me to pay? And then when someone suggested, you know what, Medicare should actually try and negotiate lower prices on the American people, Congress blocked that rule because of lobbying from the drug companies. So when you start looking at the numbers, you realize that we are spending so much more than we have to, and as soon as we rationalize costs, we can make it so that Medicare is not only solvent, but we can expand health care for all Americans.
I want to talk about human-centered capitalism. Why do we need a new form of capitalism?
I refer back to my wife and GDP. How many of you all got excited about GDP when you woke up this morning? We're like, oh, I'm going to make a big contribution today. I can feel it. Like, of course not. That's absurd. But GDP is the way we measure our economic growth. We made it up almost 100 years ago, and it's driving us off a cliff because GDP is at record highs while our life expectancy is declining. I mean, which one do you care more about? And so one of the great things I can do as president that's actually easier than a lot of the other stuff, is after I'm president in 2021, thanks to you all, thank you, Nevada, I'm going to go down the street to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, and I'm going to say, hey, GDP, really old, really out of date, kind of stupid. We'll keep it, but we're also going to broaden it and include it as a basket of measurements for our economic progress. And the other factors, the other measurements, are going to be things we actually care about, like mental health and freedom from substance abuse, like clean air and clean water, like how our kids are doing, like average income and affordability, health and life expectancy. If you had those as your measurements, then you'd actually see how we're doing, and you'd see how much we've been struggling over this last number of years. And I'll present these statistics every year to you all at the State of the Union. I'll be the first president to use a PowerPoint deck at the State of the Union, and they start going through the numbers. Instead of these bizarre theater performances we're currently subject to that I'm finding increasingly unwatchable. You know what I mean? Like, I might as well, it's like, look, I'll just give you the real stats and be like, hey, 8 Americans are dying of drugs every hour. That's horrifying, so let's get that down by 50% over the next 4 years, and here's how we're going to do it. And then next year I'll tell you how we're doing. You know, it's like you would actually be like, oh, I'm going to see how we're doing. And then the tricky part then becomes driving corporate behavior to actually improve these variables. So that if you have a company that, let's say, helps kids get stronger or gets people off of drugs, that they can somehow be rewarded for that behavior in ways other than good PR. Like, you can actually give them tax breaks based upon doing something that drives this new set of economic measurements forward. So I'm very passionate about this. It sounds a little bit esoteric, but it's actually fundamental. Because if you have the wrong measurements, you are doomed. You know, you can never make any improvements. So what we have to do is we have to start measuring the right things and drive our own behavior. And the great thing is then you'd all be excited. If I came back to you and said, hey, we brought drug overdoses down by 50%, you'd be like, that's incredible. Like, I'm really excited about that. In a way, it's like, hey, GDP hit a record high. You'd be like, who cares? You know what I mean? It's like, no one's going around and be like, GDP. GDP doesn't make any sense.
Okay, I have one more question, and then we're going to engage the audience, and we're going to ask questions from them. So, the country is facing so many challenges due to nationalism. What are your plans to bring this country back together since Donald Trump has created a huge racial divide?
I grew up Asian, as you probably noticed. Like, the perspective I have as someone who grew up, Asian American in a predominantly white suburb in upstate New York, is that people notice what race you are all the time. Like that's not like the problem. The problem is like, so the question is like, why is this tension you're describing, does it seem to be getting worse? And the reason to me is very clear, that we're making our population increasingly economically insecure, where 78% are living paycheck to paycheck, 57% can't afford an unexpected $500 bill. They look up, they see these soulless corporations that are getting rid of their jobs. They look at their kids and they're like, I'm not sure how the heck I'm going to afford college, because it got 2.5 times more expensive somehow, even though it didn't get 2.5 times better. And then in that sort of environment, then you might expect some tribalism to pick up. And then if some person comes and says, hey, it's the immigrants, like we need to blame them, then you're like, well, at least someone's like presenting some explanation, you know? It's like that's like the, but the climate is what drives it all, is that if you have this pervasive economic insecurity, it's a mindset of scarcity that people have a hard time combating or escaping. It's true about climate change too. If you go to an American who can't pay their bills and say, hey, we need to worry about climate change, they'll look at you like, I can't pay my bills. The penguins can wait. You know, and that's not blaming them, that's just humanity. It's like it's all of us in the mindset of scarcity. So if here's something we can actually control this economic boot that's on our throats, and we can get it off. After I'm president, everyone knows if the anonymous Asian man wants to give everyone money, he becomes president. You know I'm going to secure that bag and get you that money. So when we get you the money, everyone's like, holy cow, the government did something I actually love. And then this mindset of scarcity gets replaced, at least in some measure, by a mindset of abundance. And then the tribalism and tension starts going down, because if you look at someone and see the difference, then instead of seeing the difference and getting somehow like angry about it, you see the difference and you feel a sense of like peace and fellowship and curiosity. But you can't try and change the culture without actually getting the boot off of people's throats. So that is my mission.
Phenomenal. So now we have some questions from the audience. And this question is from Pam. What is the biggest issue changing the minds of people who are entrenched in the current political system? How do you change belief to fact in the minds of people?
Where's Pam? I just want to be able to see. Hey, Pam. How you doing? Well, Pam, I've had this invigorating journey running for president this past number of months, where I'm very confident that there's this enormous appetite among Americans for real talk about solutions that will actually move us forward. And that's on both sides of the aisle. It's one reason why this campaign's doing so well and is going to keep doing well, is that that politicians are kind of stuck in their particular discussion modes, and a lot of Americans are like, wait a minute, this doesn't actually seem to solve my problem. And then they hear me and they're like, ooh, like that's not everything, but it's, you know, $1,000 in cash actually makes more sense to me than a lot of these other things. And so I've actually found people on both sides of the aisle very, very receptive. I'm going to suggest something about what happened with the Republicans, well, really just the election of 2016. So you remember this. It's hard to remember, but bear with me. It's 2016, Donald Trump declares that he's running for president. Now, what was he polling at that point? 2%, 0, 1, 2%. It was not like, oh, Donald Trump, he's going to be president. That was not the reaction. It was like, Donald Trump, like, ha, ha, ha. And there were 17 Republicans running for president. You guys remember this? Jeb Bush was the favorite. Yeah. No, it's all true. Yeah, please clap, Jeb. I mean, Jeb seems like a good man. So, no, but I'm just taking down a trip down memory lane. It's like 2016. It's like, it seems like, so no, in 2015. So you have 17 Republicans running for president. You have Donald Trump, and then Donald Trump starts running the table because he's talking about things in a different way than the other 16 candidates, and he kept railroading Republican orthodoxy. He's like, you know, free trade, like, kind of a bad deal. And the Republicans were like, he just bashed free trade, like, that's it, his campaign's over. And his campaign just kept growing. You guys remember this? Remember this? And then, like, the other 16 were like, ha, like, how dare he, like, talk about free trade that way. And so he just kept on growing, because the Republican Party, the American people, had kind of lost confidence in the Republican Party's ideas. And so then when Donald Trump called them into question, people were like, yeah, that's actually, like, that sounds more compelling. I hate to say it, but the Democratic Party is in need of some new ideas. And so what's going to happen is there are going to be 19 or 20 of us running, and I'm already one of only 6 Democrats to qualify for the Democratic primary debates in June and July because we're polling, and we got more than 100,000 donors around the country. So I'm going to be on a debate stage in June and July, and the American people are going to turn on their TVs, and they're going to say, who the heck is that guy? And they're going to say, wait, he said a few things that I really kind of liked. Like, I'm going to Google him. It's like Andrew Yang, and then, like, you know, they'll find out, like, where I am. And so what happened with the Republican Party and their frankly, their need for, like, a new set of ideas is going to happen to the Democratic Party this time. And the other candidates are going to sound kind of similar to each other. And then there's going to be Andrew Yang. And the American people are going to be like, ooh, and what's going to happen is the field's going to shrink. And then as the field shrinks, like, I'm just going to keep on being there and advancing through every debate, like from June, July, September, October, like the whole way through until I arrive here in Nevada for you all to vote for me in February of 2020.
Yes, this question is from Corey Brown. What parts of the Green New Deal do you agree with?
Where's Corey?
I'm over here.
Hey Corey, how's it going, man? So I agree with the fundamental vision of the Green New Deal that we should move towards renewable energy sources, and that's not going to happen on its own. Like, the government needs to make a pretty big set of pushes because those energy forms are more expensive and not economically competitive right now. So the only way to get there is for the government to put incentives in place and big resources to work. The timeline, 12 years, very aggressive. You know, I think I applaud the vision. Like, I'm for most all of the particulars of the Green New Deal with the recognition that, you know, it's going to be a huge lift for us to even start moving in that direction. And Nevada, in many ways, again, is a microcosm of this, where someone asked me today about the potential of solar panels here in Nevada. It's obviously vast. We just have sunshine to spare. I mean, you're talking about, like, you know, you could put a bunch of solar panels out. The couple things that I differ with the Green New Deal on, number one is this link to economic scarcity, is that if we can put more money into people's hands, then I think that we'll actually get more energy around the Green New Deal. The second thing is that Americans have this tendency to talk about climate change as if we're 100% of global emissions, and that if we cut back, then all emissions will go down. But we are only 15% of global emissions. We could cut our emissions in half, and it would probably only marginally decrease the rate of climate change. Now, of course, I would try and help other countries move in the same direction, but the reality is they're in different points in their development than we are, and a lot of them are going to use fossil fuels and the rest of it. And there's not much we can do just to be like, you can't use that if you're like a developing country. So the last 4 years have been the 4 warmest years in recorded history, and that's also true fact. So you don't need to be like the world's greatest scientist to sense that something is up and that we're heading in this direction where it's going to become realer and nastier for many, many Americans. I don't know if you all were personally affected by the forest fires. Probably not. I think they would happen to my friends in California more so. But it's all related. It's all tied together. Because if you have less moisture in a forest, the forest gets drier. And then, like, when you have fires, they get like bigger and harder to control. So we're going to have to start investing in better infrastructure, better management of our natural resources. It's going to be expensive even just to stay still. But that's to me the right move. We have to start investing billions of dollars in our infrastructure to start preparing for the effects of climate change, because at this point we have to acknowledge that it's going to happen and that we're not going to be able to pull the entire world back probably in time.
Good. With our governance history, there's no name on this. With our governance history of mismanaging social programs, how would you guarantee that American dividends would be secure, and how would you get Congress to approve the American dividend?
Sure. I don't answer anonymous questions. Whose question is this? I don't know if you get it, but I'd like you to acknowledge it so I can talk to someone. Hey man, how's it going? Yeah. That's a great question. So I talked to a lot of groups about the fact that there's one state that's had a dividend in place for 39 years. And what state is that? Alaska. And how do they fund it? Oil. And what is the oil of the 21st century? Technology. Marijuana.
It's technology. You got it right. Thank you. So the Alaska dividend is actually a very, very positive data point, because right now, if we have social programs, which we do, we have a lot of them, they're growing in some dimensions, but they're also sometimes getting cut back in other dimensions. It's this constant struggle. Now, if you look at the petroleum dividend in Alaska, Alaska's a deep red conservative state. It was passed by a Republican governor who said, who would you rather get the oil money, the government who's just going to mess it up somehow, or you, the Alaskan people? And because the Alaskan people get that dividend every year, it actually becomes very politically popular and very hard to cut back on. Because like if I say, look, these other people are getting something, let's cut back on it, a lot of Americans will be like, yeah, cut back on that. It's like, hey, everyone's getting it, let's cut back on it. It's like, heck no, like that's the only thing you guys do that I like. And that's what happened in Alaska, where now in Alaska, it's wildly popular, has created thousands of jobs, has improved children's health, has decreased income inequality, and the vast majority of Alaskans who hate taxes, sort of like you all, because I sense you don't like taxes. The vast majority of Alaskans said they would accept higher taxes if it meant keeping or raising the dividend. So that's how you make something politically bulletproof. You make it so that everyone gets it. And when you ask how I'm going to make this happen as president, again, when I'm president in 2021, thanks to you all, everyone's going to know exactly how I got there. Everyone's going to be like, okay, the guy who ran out the dividend just won, so I think he wants to pass the dividend now. And the Democrats and progressives are going to be like, ooh, I want to work with the new Democratic president because he's my party and I like it. And then Republicans and conservatives are going to look at it and say, wait a minute, this is a massive net win for rural areas and states on the interior and Midwestern states that have gotten blasted by automation. Am I really going to stand in the way of my constituents getting billions of dollars from the techies? Can you imagine Republicans being like, no. I think they should keep all their money. I mean, there'd be like demonstrations outside their office every day, which they were, and I don't need 80% of Congress to pass the dividend. I just need 51%. You think I can get 51% of Congress to pass this dividend? And then again, after we pass the dividend, the people are going to be like, wow, they did it. Like, what else can we do? You know what I mean? And you all sense too that Republicans and conservatives actually find me very easy to work with because I'm not ideological. Like I'm not attacking anyone. I'm just trying to solve problems. I've run businesses, so I understand the numbers and the economics. I've spoken to like dozens of CEOs about this stuff, being like, look, you know what's good for business? People having money to spend. You know what's bad for business? People not having jobs and not having money to spend. Like this is pretty much a no-brainer, And so that's how we can get bipartisan consensus around it. I did not intend this, but it seems like I may be the sort of figure that both parties can be excited to work with.
Here's another anonymous question. Will the VAT be applied to all businesses or only tech companies? If only tech, what defines a tech company?
Whose question is this? It's a good one. It's a very smart question. Hey, you're sitting next to one of my favorite people too, Cassandra. So the starting point is a VAT that covers every business, but it's going to end up falling more heavily on tech companies in part because they just transact a lot more. So right now I made the example about Amazon and it's zero in federal taxes. If you can imagine Amazon paying a value-added tax, where like you all get a slice of every Amazon transaction, every Google search, every Microsoft. I don't know what the hell Microsoft sells anymore. Yeah, every Xbox. So it just happens to be that the tech money ends up being a bigger part of it. But to your point, it's hard to categorize like what's a tech business. And one of the examples I use is that if CVS replaces a cashier with an iPad, which of course they have done, are you going to say to them, oh, like we need to tax you because you replaced it with a robot? It's like, is that a robot? Like all the definitions get tricky. So what you want to do is you want to do what every other advanced economy has done and just say, look, if values trading hands, we're just going to take a toll. And then what you can do is you can actually balance the VAT so that it falls less heavily on consumer staples that everyone enjoys
For example, diapers. I mean, who the heck wants to tax diapers? Like, you should be able to buy those diapers. And then tax things more heavily that people at the top are buying more of. Let's call it yachts. Or, you guys know Jeff Bezos? He spends $1 billion a year on rocket engines to go to Mars. Do you guys know this? So maybe we should have a slightly higher tax on rocket engines. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, like, maybe that guy should worry about what's happening on planet Earth. You know? So we have to bring him back down to Earth a little bit. So the starting point is a value-added tax that applies economy-wide, but then you tailor it so that it falls more heavily on some things and less on others.
Okay, we have 2 more questions, and then we can wrap it up. What are your plans to fix the broken criminal justice system and the mass incarceration of African American people? And this question is from Nakia.
Hey, Nakia. Thank you for a tremendous question. So I'm so thrilled that America's waking up to the fundamental injustices in our system of incarceration, our criminal justice system. And so there's a bipartisan consensus now around some of the things that we should do. So one thing we should do is we should get rid of private prisons, because it makes no sense to have a profit motivation. They literally profit more by having people come back to jail. I mean, what the heck kind of incentive structure is that? It's like the worst thing in the world. And they also benefit from, frankly, skimping on treatments for patients and rehabilitation expense and everything else. So get rid of private prisons is number one. Number two is if you put money into people's hands, it's going to, I believe, reduce some of the financial exigencies that push people towards criminality and get people into trouble. I would also decriminalize marijuana. I think you all know I'm all for that. And then I would pardon everyone who's in jail for a nonviolent marijuana-related offense. On April 20th, 2021, it's gonna be get out of jail and get high day from the Yank presidency. I'm gonna high five them on the way out. It's gonna be a great day for me. I'd be a very, very popular man that day. As you, I might be a very popular man the whole time. So that's another move. Another thing that you all, I'm sure you know people are struggling with, I would decriminalize opiates that are for personal use. Like if you're selling, then we should criminalize that. But if you're using, then we just need to refer you straight to treatment and counseling and not to a prison cell. And so these are some of the moves I would make. And again, I'm really thrilled that the country really has had an awakening to the fact that what we did in the past was not the right way to go.
This is another anonymous question. What is the new American scorecard, and how do you pitch it to Congress?
Whose question is this? This is a good Yang question. It's cool. So the American scorecard is that set of new economic measurements that I described before that I'm going to present every year at the State of the Union. And getting Congress on board with it is actually going to be pretty straightforward. Because one, again, like the government does not need to go to Congress to update economic statistics. That's actually not like like Congress never was like, ooh, let's use GDP for stuff. And so if you have new measurements, you can just say, hey, here are these new measurements. Like we should start putting these out. And then the challenge then is tying tax breaks to behaviors that you're excited about. So that if a company does something positive for the community, then they can actually get some economic benefits. That part's a little trickier, and so that you have to work with Congress to achieve. But Congress is going to be on board with it because like when I talk to CEOs, I'd say it's like, look, we get it. Your hands are tied. You can talk a big game about doing wholesome stuff, but at the end of the quarter, you have to optimize for your profitability because that's why you get paid. That's like, and that's one reason why the automation threat is so enormous, because if you're a CEO and you have 1,000 call center workers and someone comes to your office with like software, it's like, hey, I can replace those call center workers for you. And I know right now if you call and get a bot, then you're just like, get me a human as fast as possible because the bot is super annoying, am I right? But in about 2 years, the bot's gonna be really good. In about 2 years, the bot's gonna be like this, be like, hey Andrew, how you doing? What's up, what can I do for you?
Sure, be happy to get that done for you. And I'll be like, ooh, this was delightful. They're like, if you'd like to give feedback on my program because I'm a bot, like that's really the way it's going to go down. And so if you're the CEO of this business and you have to manage for quarterly profitability, and then they come to your office with the software saying you can replace your 1,000 call center workers, you literally have to use that software. Like, they can literally fire you if you do not, you know what I mean? It's like, if you go to your quarterly meeting and they were like, you could have cut 1,000 jobs and you didn't, and now we have this extra payroll, it's like, you're fired. That's literally the way our system is designed right now. So if you want CEOs to have any kind of flexibility to do something more human and wholesome and positive for stakeholders, you have to build it into the numbers. There's no other way. So you can imagine a world where the CEO has their profitability, but also they get incentives attached for helping find workers new roles, for giving people healthcare benefits. Like right now, the reason we're losing so badly is that we have this economy that optimizes for the single variable, and the rest of it we just pay lip service to. Like the only thing we can do is we can just integrate the things that we actually value into the numbers. And if we do that, then we can actually free up some of these CEOs to be truly accountable in a human way. And then we can say, like, look, you did good or you didn't do good. Because right now, they just get measured by the numbers.
Okay. And as I shared with you earlier, as we talked, your platform is realistic and it makes sense. How many agree that it's innovative and the time is now? And so I would like to congratulate you and I commend you for a wonderful job, and especially, again, being on the platform with me. It was such an honor.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you. Let's give Sheila a round of applause as well. Thank you, Sheila.
And also, we can go to the center. And I want you guys to chant with me. I heard someone say, uh-oh. Let's say, we're going to usher in the new Democratic 2020 President of the United States. Everybody say yes! Yes!
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Thank you. I'd love to say hello to each of you all. Stick around, take selfies, and do the rest of it. Hit my music. Where's my music at? Thank you all so much. Las Vegas, we're making history in 2020. I can't wait. Yes, these are receiving live. What's up, brother?
Perfect. So just make sure people aren't coming up on stage.